here's what I think happened with this battle over force to vote. AOC personally coordinated the attacks on Jimmy Dore. That's what I believe happened. And behind that, you had Democratic congressional leadership actually getting AOC to shut this down because it was such a threat to what they were trying to do, because it challenges the whole concept of this progressive wing sheepdogging all of these young people who are being betrayed and all of these left-wing millennials back into the Democratic Party. It's just scared them. It scared the hell out of them. And AOC, I know this for a fact. I know AOC was told by Pelosi and whoever else to shut this stuff down.
I had to make a difficult decision when I was a young man. And it wasn't just a decision about how I was going to talk about politics. It was how I was going to think and how I was going to feel about politics. I made the decision that I'm never going to say these things like doubtless. Oh, doubtless, this secret shadowy deal went down between AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and Nancy Pelosi. Doubtless. I know this for a fact. No, you don't. No, you don't. You know what? I'm going to be the one person who says, I have doubts. I'm going to be the one person who says, I know the difference between a speculation and a matter of fact.
Everybody agrees with hashtag force to vote. The people who are against it, it's inexplicable. And you're not supposed to question their motives. I question their motives. Cenk Uygur's on the take. And he's working for the Democratic Party. And he's working for his corporate donors, Jeffrey Katzenberg, Buddy Roemer, right-wingers. Anna Kasparian has health care. She got $24 million from Katzenberg, as I was told by an executive at the Young Turks. I was told when they took that money, the Young Turks now has to move to the center, and we know that. And that's what this is. I've never had an original idea in my life. Peddled McCarthyism and censorship for 4 years while taking $20 million in Katzenberg cash. I think they're doing it because they're on the take. And they have a manager inside the Democratic Party along with Katzenberg. That's why I think. And plus, I was told they had to move towards the center, and this is part of it.
And another aspect, too, of what causes misanthropy is not being able to recognize the capacity of evil within yourself or seeing a glimpse of it and being terrified of it. And I think a lot of people instead project it onto others and just see the evil in humanity. When you don't have a balanced view of yourself, the good and the bad parts of yourself, you can't have a balanced view of the world. And then another personality aspect I see in misanthropes, and this is one that I've struggled with, which is really embarrassing, but it's that when you hate people and you try to place yourself above them by just seeing how evil they are, projecting all of your own, negativity onto them, and then judging them for it. It's like you're trying to place yourself above them for some sense of power, like, oh, if everyone's evil and bad, I'm not that way, because I could tell that they're bad, and I could judge them, and I could critique them, and that makes me good.
Why, Cenk? Did you get a phone call from your manager? Do you need another round of funding from right-wingers and corporations? Who called you, Cenk? So Cenk is what they call controlled opposition. And that's what he's pointing out. And that's what the Young Turks are now. And I don't think there can be any doubt about it. Working for his corporate donors, Jeffrey Katzenberg, Buddy Roemer, right-wingers. He's against Julian Assange. He's a total fucking corporate sellout. Cenk is 100% wrong. It's easy to fucking make him look like a chump because he is. It's not my job to come up with shit. It's their fucking job. The squad wasn't strategizing at all until I came up with this idea a month ago. They weren't going to do anything. And by the way, they didn't do anything. They did nothing with their leverage, Cenk. Nothing. He says, progressives in Congress, wake up. Speaker Pelosi is not on your side and never will be. If you don't start fighting on her on policy positions, then you're going to lose all credibility. She's not your friend. This was January 4th. He put this out. Is today the 4th?
Jimmy, today's the 4th.
That's today.
He did that at 1:30 a.m. after the vote.
After the vote. After they did what he told them to do. Vote for Nancy Pelosi. He told them to do that. He said, don't force the vote. He told them. They did it. And then he tweets, you better start fucking opposing. What? And then he tweets, you better start opposing her. Or you're going to lose credibility. I think the people who just lost credibility was the Young Turks. Okay, everybody. So what happened yesterday? What happened with the hashtag force to vote? Well, it started out AOC, Cori Bush, and Barbara Lee for Congress all did not vote for Nancy Pelosi as Speaker. They didn't say anything. And so we all thought that they were withholding their vote. And it turns out they weren't. because boom, and now they all voted for her. So every member of the squad voted for Nancy Pelosi. The only people who didn't vote for Nancy Pelosi were corporate Democrats, blue dogs and people like that. Though they were able to withhold their vote from Nancy Pelosi. The squad who ran on withholding their vote from Nancy Pelosi and forcing a floor vote on Medicare for all. They ran on this. The time came they could do it. They didn't do it. They were the only ones who didn't do it. Corporate Democrats voted against her. I said shame on the House progressives for not fighting for forced to vote and Medicare for all. What is the point of voting for progressives inside the Democratic Party again? They won't fight. They are selling you out and abandoning you. Shame. We are a failed state, as is the progressive movement.
I made another really difficult decision in my life around the year 1998 that I was not going to accept this left-wing assumption that poverty is virtue and that all virtues require and stem from poverty. And it was a difficult decision to make, and it was a difficult decision to live with because I was surrounded with left-wing people. I was surrounded by left-wing people who would tear me down and attack me for supposedly being born rich, or even if they didn't know anything about my family, they could just attack me because of the fact that I was enrolled as a student at the University of Toronto, so I could afford to be a university student instead of being a factory worker or, I don't know, working at McDonald's or whatever gold standard for proletariat authenticity they have in mind. All right, I can remember going to Green Party functions, ecological functions, and people attacking me for being bourgeois or for my politics being middle class. And I would stand there with complete self-confidence and say in their face, yes, that's what I am. What are you going to do about it? And they'd never dealt with that before. They were so utterly accustomed to being surrounded by self-hating, self-sabotaging left-wingers who would say, oh, no, how can you say I'm middle class? My grandfather worked in a factory, or my uncle is on the dole, or my brother is unemployed, or you don't know what a struggle my life is. Or they say, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, they say that they used to be a waitress. You know, I used to work at Starbucks personally. It doesn't matter. I'm still middle class. And I made that decision that no, I'm going to have the personal integrity and honesty not to live a lie and not to base my political philosophy on a lie and not to pander to other people whose worldview is based on this really insidious and self-defeating lie. Now, if you wonder why I mention this, it's because it is indeed a subtle but important and recurring theme throughout Jimmy Dore's work and throughout his confrontation with the Young Turks, AOC, and these other left-wing parties in this particular controversy. But in the next clip I'm about to play, you're going to hear exactly how this plays out, much more overtly, much more brutally. As it turns out that, hey, there's the same cycle of the left wing tearing itself apart, left-wingers tearing themselves, tearing one another down. You can never be left-wing enough. You can never be woke enough. You can never be politically correct enough. You can never be anti-racist enough. And oh, guess what? You can never be poor enough.
They need AOC energy, and she's been created as this giant celebrity. And then for AOC personally, she was brought out of obscurity. AOC, she was not a movement figure. I mean, she says right at the end of every sentence, which you have to do if you're in the movement, right? So you have to do that, right? And she calls everyone
right.
Folks. You have to call everyone folks and say right at the end of every. The Proud Folks were out today, right? So anyway, but she was never a part of the BDS movement. She was never at anti-war rallies.
And she sold out. The Palestinians were the first people she sold out.
But even before, she was never a part of anything. She was a bartender. And she's always like, yeah, like she was at some like dive bar or something with all of these like factory workers saddling up after a hard day. And then they have to like put their feet in buckets full of hot water because they were standing all day or something on the assembly line. No bullshit. She was at this bar called like, I forget what it was called. It was on Union Square, and you have to have a headshot before you get hired at that bar. It's like an elite bar. That's as far one of the bars I think she worked at. But anyway, she comes into Congress completely unknown, uplifted by all these DSA people who live in the gentrifying sections of her district, which are pushing the Puerto Ricans out. And then she starts to make $170,000. She's a national celebrity on the cover of Vanity Fair, wearing $4,000 dresses, posing with Nancy Pelosi. She's important. And she starts to get cognitively captured by the establishment. And now she's presented by Jimmy Dore. He presents her with the basic contradiction, a fundamental contradiction of what she said before she was elected.
Which is how she defeated Crowley and pulled off that victory. Is by adopting this movement that she then refused to stand up for.
And saying, I will be a one-term congressperson and I'm going to disrupt business as usual because these people are screwing you. And that's why they voted for her. And then she refuses to do it. She won't do it because she doesn't want to give up all of what she has, which could possibly lead her to the Senate or even the presidency in her mind. And so that's what's been created for us. And then you have all these pundits acting as her lager, to use an Afrikaner South African term, circling the wagons around her to defend her, and just deploying the same access journalism that is part of the culture of the Beltway that we hate, that the DSA is supposed to hate. And they've all been dragged into the system on AOC's coattails. And that's why it's so important what Jimmy did. He succeeded. Force the Vote succeeded in exposing the squad. It succeeded. Anyone who says it failed doesn't know how this works. And it succeeded because it's moving people towards organizations outside the Democratic Party, which will never produce material change. I'm 43. I just turned 43. It's never produced material change in my lifetime. I'm not going to live forever, so I'm eventually going to go in a different direction, and so should you.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, her credentials as blue collar, as working class, as oppressed, as poor, they here get called into question, and she gets torn apart for being middle class. It's a fundamental error to live your life as if poverty is virtue and virtue is poverty. Do you think that nobody who's born rich ever had any good ideas? If you were working in the sciences, would you take someone's report on mathematics or physics or chemistry and judge it by saying, what social class was this person born to? Is this a bourgeois or a working class ideology? Guys, there's a poison here on the left, and it goes all the way back to Karl Marx. And if you don't know the danger of it, take a good long look at what happened when these ideologies were put into practice by Lenin, by Stalin, by Mao Zedong.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. For this week's video, I wanted to do one on misanthropy, which is basically the hatred of people and humankind. This is something that I've dealt with for a lot of my life and have only recently overcome, but I'll get into my personal experience towards the end of the video. So the first thing I want to talk about is what causes misanthropy. I think the main reason for a lot of people is feeling alienated from the people around you. Whether you have social anxiety or you don't understand social norms very well, or if you just have such low self-esteem and low self-worth that you feel like a burden towards others and also feel anger at them because you feel like they don't understand you. A lot of hatred for humanity stems from not feeling understood and feeling alienated from other people. And another aspect too of what causes misanthropy is not being able to recognize the capacity of evil within yourself or seeing a glimpse of it and being terrified of it. And I think a lot of people instead project it onto others and just see the evil in humanity. When you don't have a balanced view of yourself, the good and the bad parts of yourself, you can't have a balanced view of the world. And if you either, one, overly recognize your capacity for evil and neglect the good parts of yourself, you're gonna hate yourself, which a lot of misanthropes do. And then number two, if you also can't accept the evil within yourself, you're probably going to project it onto others because it's easier to deal with these negative aspects of yourself when you project them onto somebody else and then criticize them for it rather than yourself. When you have a really negative outlook on life, you kind of develop confirmation bias for it. You only see the negative. You just can't see the good in people even when it's right in front of your face. And even when good things happen, like let's say someone's being nice to you, you're just gonna try to rationalize it into your own self-belief of thinking you're worthless by thinking, oh, this person's being phony to me, they're probably gonna exploit me, or whatever it is that you believe. You just can't take any positivity from the environment around you. And then another personality aspect I see in misanthropes, and this is one that I've struggled with, which is really embarrassing, but it's that when you hate people and you try to place yourself above them by just seeing how evil they are, projecting all of your own, negativity onto them, and then judging them for it. It's like you're trying to place yourself above them for some sense of power, like, oh, if everyone's evil and bad, I'm not that way, because I could tell that they're bad, and I could judge them, and I could critique them, and that makes me good.